Okay, good afternoon. I hope everybody's having a great day. Today, we want to kind of help you begin. I know that some of you all sent me some sources over the weekend. And again, make sure that you keep everything in a single thread. I emailed each of you in an email thread that says social research in your name. Make sure that you send all paperwork. Most of your coursework, of course, is going to be submitted through your final submissions are going to be submitted through e-learning. But if you send me drafts and things like that, please keep it through that single email, as I indicated to you all several times already. One of the things I want you to make note of, is the process and really get a true understanding of walking through this process. So I'm going to go briefly into a project that I'm working on. Again, you all are not the only ones that are doing social research right now. I'm plumb exhausted from doing some of my own. So I will go through. So the background itself, Brianna, like I know you were interested in the Trump era. So very briefly, I'm going to read the background here, and don't be sharing this to nobody. This is ain't fully available for the public yet. The Great American Experiment of Capitalist Democracy, and look, follow my variables. It's a lot of variables here. That's one of the most important things. Most of the research questions were really good that you sent. Where we struggled is in identifying variables. So part of this exercise is designed to help you think about these more clearly for your own paper. The Great American Experiment, final interruption. You're going to have to do a proposal as well eventually. So please take notes and use this as a model. That you're not asked to do this right now, Diamond Thomas, but with your research question before you pose it, you want to give your authors some background about, the topic itself. Don't just dive into the question. It shouldn't be very long, but follow again here how you can set this up for your own work in a few weeks. The Great American Experiment of Capitalist Democracy has long relied on a delicate balance of volatile Madison-style pluralism, where competing interest groups have vied for varying levels of power to better position their communities to survive and thrive in the United States. The nation's 46th president recognized this when he finally delivered his acceptance speech just after 8 p.m. on November 7th, 4 days after the final vote had been cast in a highly contested 2020 presidential election. The 45th white man out of 46 to be selected to this office thanked all the groups that made his victory possible. Young people, suburban white voters, gays, Latinos, Asians. But easily the most highly covered component of his speech was when he gave special attention to the Black community and the power of the Black vote, saying, "The African American community stood up for me again. They always have my back and I'll have yours." The 2020 election demonstrated again, in a way that Joe Biden couldn't possibly deny, that concentrated Black power is the backbone of the Democratic Party. However, it also reinforced the degree to which Black power is an idea without which we can't possibly understand America's political, economic, and cultural development more generally, and yet it's been insufficiently analyzed. Frequently feared, often cliched, generally understood, until you do right by me, it's rooted in this idea of Black power. Now let's come focus in, young people, as I gave you the background, on the research questions. What does Black power mean and who has determined its meaning? How has Black power been realized across time? And by who and under what conditions? Who is opposed to it, under what conditions, and for what purpose? Most significantly, how can Black power be realized in the present? And what does this portend for America's future? So my research topic should be pretty obvious. What is the general topic? Not the question, what's the topic? What is the topic in this study so far? Deja, do you recall your research question?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It's about Black depression. That's what I was speaking about.
Word it exactly how you worded it in the paper. What's your research question, Ms. Barnes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What is the role of annual income in explaining the increasing rate of suicide in America during the COVID-19 pandemic? You need me to repeat it?
Yes, give me one moment. And what we're doing, I'm gonna just a moment here. And Deja, come on back in once you get the question, okay? All right, so tell me that research question one more again.
What is the role of annual income in explaining the increasing rate of suicide in America during the COVID-19 pandemic?
All right, so again, well, most of this you're going to have to do on your own. I want you to get a sense of how to go about doing these searches. I know you've started on some of this process already, so just follow me here, and we're going to do some of this together. So we'll start real simple. So welcome back, ladies. I do want to remind you again that the class is interactive. So again, if you have other things that you need to do it's always totally okay. But you won't be able to just stay and like sit off camera while I talk in the background. I'm going to kick you out if that happens. So you do need to stay engaged, or as always, lecture's going to be recorded, and you can pick it up when you have a little bit more time to focus in from whatever else you were doing. So, all right, so we're getting, like you see here with our first source. So you can see my screen okay, Janiyah?
Yes, sir.
So already we're getting like our first sources here with Canada. So I'm going to change it up real quick. And generally, you don't want to put this many words in your key search, but we're going to narrow it down in a moment. So looking at these, Ms. Barnes, which, as I scroll down, let me know if you see any sources that you think may be relevant. Can you give me this category?
I see mental health equity.
Okay, good. Let's look at this one and see what it says. And be clear for your focus. You're definitely going to see a lot of things about mental health. What aspect are you looking at in particular?
Income. But wouldn't that necessarily?
Well, related to again? What aspects related to mental health are you looking at in particular?
What aspect?
The suicide rate.
Suicide rate, yes.
So we want to make sure that we don't mix up, like if they give you something that talks about like bipolar or schizophrenia. But let's see what this says here. I'm going to read this aloud. And again, even though we're focusing on Janiyah's research, she had a research question, like, prepared and everything, like we were going to do this, like we talked about last week. This still can be helpful for you all, so I would encourage you to follow. The COVID-19 pandemic is likely to have profound mental health impacts that pervade racial, ethnic, and class lines in the United States. And as you go through these sources, Janiyah, initially, again, all I want you to do is what I'm doing here, read the abstracts. Past disasters and public health emergencies, however, suggest that socially disadvantaged groups, racial, ethnic minorities, people with low income, 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 will experience more psychiatric morbidity related to the pandemic than socially advantaged groups. I'll say already, we can use this source, okay? But let me read more. The origins of these disparities are structural in nature. Historically produced arrangements of power and privilege provide socially advantaged groups with more resources to limit their exposure to and cope with stressors caused by disaster. Although racial ethnic minorities have lower lifetime prevalence rates of mood and anxiety disorders than non-Hispanic whites in the United States, while low-income groups have higher rates, there are specific aspects of COVID-19 pandemic that could cause it to have disproportionately adverse impacts on the mental health of racial ethnic minorities as well as low-income populations. And again, I'm gonna re-summarize this in English in just a moment, but again, follow along with me as best you can. This commentary highlights two of these aspects, financial insecurity and grief, and depicts the COVID-19 pandemic from a mental health equity perspective, Janiyah. The goal of this research is to orient future psychiatric research about mental health equity and COVID-19 and extend discourse about the disparate impacts of the pandemic to the domain of mental health. I focus on Blacks, Hispanics, and low-income populations as socially disadvantaged groups because they represent large and often overlapping segments of the US population that have been historically marginalized. I use the United States as a case study, but the issues identified are likely applicable to other developed countries with high levels of social and economic income inequality. And then they get into the article itself. Pretty brief, so this will be helpful. So let's go back through this abstract real quick. So let me ask you this, Janiyah. What do you think are the links to what was presented there to your particular research question? How do you think we can link this article to your particular research question?
I'm trying to look at the abstract. But what really stood out to me being that I'm focusing on low income, and it mentioned like far as how I'm trying to find it. Lower lifetime rates of mood disorders. No. Basically, when they said it focusing on people like the racial and ethnic minorities and people with low income, I already feel as if that's gonna have that particular section already filled out for me to obtain information from. Good.
And what it represents is that there's probably been some previous research on this that is in line with your hypothesis. Your hypothesis suggested that money could affect mental health, particularly during COVID times. They're saying this, so yes, they have already borne out these correlations. And one of the things I thought was really interesting was this section here. And what it says, the paraphrasing here is that on average, according to his research, Black people have lower, when we have mental health episodes, they usually don't last as long as white people. But for poor people, it's reverse. So for poor people, it does generally last a little bit longer. So that's right along with yours. So again, your hypothesis is that the low income is going to have an impact. They're suggesting that as well. So this is definitely something that you can utilize, and I will email this to you as a source in just a moment. Thank you. Let's do one more, and then we'll get into some other research questions in a moment. Let me see if you see any others, Janiyah, that you think might be good for your. The
other one, mental health, substance abuse, and suicidal. I'm still looking though. That I wasn't telling you to click on. I was just looking at it.
For sure.
But that stood out to me. The impact of COVID-19 on suicide rates. Those two articles. I don't know. The first one that says mental health, substance use, and then the second one underneath. But I'll click on the second one underneath the first one.
I would agree. Let's look at what it says very quickly. And again, tell the class one more time, Janiyah Barnes, your research question.
No, I want to read it verbatim. What is the role of annual income in explaining the increasing rate of suicide in America during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Good. Listen, her variables are very clear. And that makes the search easier. All right, so I'm going to read the abstract with you. And again, as you go through these sources, start to look at the abstracts and see how this stuff break down. And much like me and Janiyah are doing here, what we're also going to do individually throughout the semester is break down some of this stuff together. None of these things you'll have to do by yourself. I just need you to get started early on to give us enough time to really get through them in a really coherent way. Multiple lines of evidence, Janai, indicate that the COVID-19 pandemic has profound psychological and social effects. The psychological sequelae of the pandemic will probably persist for months and years to come. Studies indicate that the COVID-19 pandemic is associated with distress, anxiety, fear of contagion, depression, and insomnia in the general population and among healthcare professionals. Social isolation, anxiety, fear, contagion, uncertainty, chronic stress, and economic difficulties may lead to the development or exacerbation of depressive, anxiety, substance abuse, and other psychotic disorders in vulnerable populations, including individuals with pre-existing psychiatric disorders and people who reside in high COVID-19 prevalence areas. Stress-related psychiatric conditions, including mood and substance use disorders, are associated, Janiyah, with suicidal behavior. COVID-19 survivors may also be at an elevated suicide risk. The COVID-19 crisis may increase suicide rates during and after the pandemic. Mental health consequences of the COVID-19 crisis, including suicidal behavior, are likely to be present for a long time and peak later than the actual pandemic. To reduce suicides during the COVID-19 crisis, it is imperative to decrease stress, anxiety, fears, and loneliness in the general population. There should be traditional and social media campaigns to promote mental health and reduce distress. Active outreach is necessary, especially for people with a history of psychiatric disorders, COVID-19 survivors, and older adults. Research studies like Janiyah Barnes are needed of how mental health consequences can be mitigated during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. So the focus here, Janiyah, is more applied research where they're looking at, like, where they're acknowledging, like, okay, look, people are definitely dealing with these mental health problems, like, you know, that's almost inevitable. This section here seems to be the main focus of their work, where they're going to be looking at ways to reduce people's mental health stressors. But you can still utilize this article. We'll have to, you know, let me think it through. I'm going to send you this. You can definitely use like the background, and there's probably some statistics in here that you can use. So we'll still find a way to tie this in. Do you have any questions about this source or comments about it?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. And again, keep doing this on your own. I'm gonna have the library folks come and give us a tutorial. And please, if you have not done so, start to schedule some time with them. Give me 1 second before I get up out of this. Let me send these links to Janiyah Barnes. Give me 1 second, y'all. Does anybody have any questions as I'm going through this process? And look, make this easy on yourselves. I'm gonna, you know, again, these classes, I'm hoping that you're finding this helpful, where again, you can see how the processes are done, and you can demystify it. Where I know that at times the research process can be very intimidating. I know it was intimidating for me when I first started. Hell, it's intimidating for me now. Again, I was attempting to show this proposal with you as I was rolling out. Again, you know, some uncertainty just about, you know, making sure I was laid it out properly, how to go about gathering information. So it can be a tenuous process, but it's one that you don't have to go through by yourself. But please hear me out and understand it is a process that you cannot procrastinate through. It is a process you cannot procrastinate through. But if you do just a little bit at a time, I promise you that this will be as minimal stress as possible. You got to put in some work. But hopefully it's a topic that you're interested in, and that makes it a little easier. All right, so now you got 3 sources towards your bibliography, young lady. Try and give me collect 5 more academic sources between now and Thursday. Do you think that you'll have time? Do you think that you'll have time to do that?
Yes, sir. But I know I'm not supposed to be talking about it in front of class, but I have to have oral surgery on Thursday. I don't know if you remember if I told you or not. But I mean, I
Okay,
can get it done. I'm gonna get
okay,
it
for
done.
sure. If you do need more time, let me know. Again, all of y'all right now are ahead of schedule. I just need y'all to stay on schedule. Somebody give me another dope research question. Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Don't leave us though.
I can give you mine.
Go ahead, Diamond Thomas.
What social factors best explain the different levels of educational development between female-headed and male-headed single-parent households in the United States?
Good, right. Very good question. Okay, let me see. All right. Say the question one more time.
What social factors best explain the different levels of educational development between female-headed and male-headed single-parent households in the United States?
Okay. And again, look at my search. Make sure you, again, write this stuff down, Diamond Thomas.
Okay.
Again, you generally don't want to put this much in here, but my search is just, I started off with male and single parent households / child education development.
Okay.
Very generic search. I don't know if I'm gonna find anything, but let's see. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So do you see any sources so far that you think might be relevant to your research question? And follow along, Diamond. Say it again.
The third one.
Excellent, Diamond. We ain't got the whole source here, but let's see what the abstract says.
Okay.
All right, so this article examines the effect of living in a single parent family on educational attainment by gender and race. According to household production theory, the reduction in parental resources for human capital investment in children living in a single parent family should lower their educational attainment. Using matched mother-daughter and mother-son samples from the National Longitudinal Surveys, we constructed precise measures of age and the length of time a child in a single parent family. Empirical findings show that the negative effect of living in a single parent family increases the number of years spent in this type of family. It's the greatest during preschool years, and it's larger for boys and girls. All right, let me step back from this for a second and try and process it for myself. Bear with me.
Okay.
All right, so it might be something we could use here, but as opposed to comparing your research, Diamond, is interested in comparing Black single fathers and Black single mother families, but they're comparing the boys and girls raised in single mother families.
Okay.
We might be able to use it, but let's dip back for a second because it's not totally exploring your variables, but it might be that article might tell us something about single mothers that we might be able to use in your research.
Okay.
Do you see any others that you think might be on point for your research question?
The first one.
Word up. Janiyah whipping that car. What you doing? You driving an 18-wheeler, Janiyah? What's going on? All right, so sex of parent and child's well-being in single-parent households. So it looks like it's looking at their overall well-being, not just education, but we can still use it. Okay. This one, I'll make it, let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. It's even small for me, so I know it's probably small for y'all. Okay. Do women and men play unique roles in shaping children's well-being? If so, we should know the important differences between offspring living with single mothers and those living with single fathers. Oh yeah, we in the pocket right now, Diamond. This is definitely related. To date, researchers have been unable to assess this claim satisfactorily because they have lacked generalizable data of detailed information about adolescents in both single mother and single father households. So what they're saying so far, people have had the same question that you wonder, Diamond. Is there a difference between living with your moms and dads if you live in a single parent household? But they saying so far, they ain't really had enough data to figure it out. So we compare well-being, and again, listen to the variables here, Diamond. So one of the variables is well-being. They're going to explain to us how they're going to measure that. I don't know yet. It sounds pretty abstract to me, but I'm sure that they've thought this through. We compare well-being among adults living in single mother and single father households using a 1990 wave of the National Education Longitudinal Study and among adults raised by single parents using data from the General Social Surveys, 1972 to 1994. One of the things that you want to pay close attention to in your own research, Nashaya, is where they get their information from. So whether there's their main sample here, Diamond, the source of the information are these two surveys. So like in social science, there's surveys that they give every year. Like y'all gonna see these all the time when you get to grad school, for example. So the National Longitudinal Survey, the General Social, where they ask people questions about everything, like anything you could possibly imagine. So I'm sure that no matter what your research question is, several of you are gonna see this, but make sure that you, like when you do the annotated bibliographies, one of the things you have to put is where they got the information. So make note of stuff like this. And again, we're gonna do this slowly and you're gonna get help. Our results highlight how single mothers and single fathers differ from each other in ways that often predate their family structure, but suggest that there's little evidence that offspring are better off or develop particular characteristics in one household versus the other. We suggest that theorists have overemphasized the role of parents, sex, and youth, we suggest that theorists have overemphasized the role of parent sex in youth development at the expense of understanding more structural explanations for the association between family structure and well-being. See if there's anything else here. Very interesting. So, Diamond, in some ways, and look, your goal in your research questions, young people, is not to prove whether you're right or not. Your goal is to get at the truth. So what they're saying here, Diamond, is that they reject your hypothesis. That they believe that the differences between sexes, between male households and female households, they believe that's been overstated. Now we're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper to find out the conclusions, but this is definitely something that you can, and again, if that's what you find in your research, that there's no difference in educational attainment, that's okay. Like again, right? That would suggest a lot of times people think like, oh my God, she may have to go live with her father. It's gonna be awful. If we can show that data doesn't show that, that's okay too, right? Or if we see like, look, no, these scores fall off dramatically when they go live with their daddy, then, we want to be able to share that information. So again, our goal is to answer the question, not to prove anything. Be clear on that, okay? Because you're gonna come across a lot of data information that's gonna say that your hypothesis, Janai, is incorrect. Our task is not necessarily to prove that wrong, just like, look, you're right. Like again, there have been claims that I'm making that I found out, no, there's no correlation between those things. So keep this in mind. And again, we will talk in great detail about how you can integrate this article. As I told you in the email, I think this is a really fascinating topic. I think you can do a lot of things with it. And I think you're gonna get a lot of sources. But what it also shows, and I want you all to keep this in mind when you go through these sources, is how in tune y'all thinking is. The questions y'all are asking are questions that people are asking within the discipline. They just said right there, Diamond, people have wondered that same thing forever, but we don't know for sure. So it's so many things that we don't know. And then as I told y'all, Black people, most of these research questions early on were asked by white males. So it's so many things that we don't know about Black people, about women, about Hispanics, about handicapped people, about Asians. So there's so much like, ahead of us with this research. And as a final point, like, again, I don't know like where you might want to take this, with your future career goals, Dr. Janiyah Barnes, but COVID is going to have so many effects. You could make a whole career just writing about the effects of COVID, like real talk. Like it's going to it's the economy, like it's obviously like going to affect y'all, but like, the little bitty kids that haven't been able to go to school for like a year, to like, it's going to be a lot of stuff, that comes out of this. So a good job so far. Look, we're going to get bumped out in a moment. Diamond and Janiyah, unless y'all need more help, I will let y'all go ahead and go with your day. I would encourage you to stay because, again, I think this can be instructive for everybody. And Diamond, I'm going to send you these sources also. For everybody else, I'm going to log back. Because I'm going to get bumped out in a moment. I'm going to log out and I'm going to log back in at 1:45. I'm going to log back in at 1:45. You're welcome to join me. I would really encourage you to do so, especially if I have not gone through your question yet. Diamond, check your email. I'm going to send you a few more sources. Do you have Diamond and Janiyah? Do you all feel like you have a good sense of how you want to go about your searches as we go forward?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And again, it's a process. Like, sometimes you have to type in different things in these keywords and narrow down your searches. Like, so give yourself some time with that. And like I said, every step of the way, you're going to get help. For each of you, try and get at least 5 between now and Thursday. If you want to do more than that, I won't be mad at you. But try and do at least 5 more in addition to those I'm going to see. And again, these that I'm sending you, you can absolutely put and should put in your final bibliography. I'll see y'all on the other side at 1:45.
Okay.
Muhammad.